The ice cut into my skin like 1,000 sharp blades, but it wasn't the physical pain that consumed me. It was seeing that land, my land, suffocated by eternal frost, its children shivering in dark caves, its plants wilting under the weight of perpetual snow. My fists clenched and I felt the magma bubbling in my veins. The moment had come. Either I would save my people, or I would destroy them in the attempt. My name is Aganju, and I carry within me the burning heart of the earth. This is no metaphor. It is literally how I exist. While other Orixas wield the wind, water, or wisdom, I carry the primordial fire, the one that forged continents and raised mountains. It is a terrible and magnificent gift, and over millennia I have learned that with great power comes an even greater responsibility. In those dark days when the great winter blanketed our land, I watched from the summit of my sacred mountain. The cold had come suddenly and cruelly, brought by forces that defied the natural order. It was no ordinary winter. It was a curse, a punishment that froze not only bodies but also souls. I remember descending to the villages in disguise, walking among my people. I saw children who no longer played, their laughter silenced by the cold that pierced their small hearts. I saw elders whispering stories around feeble fires, their eyes losing the spark of hope. I saw young warriors who no longer dreamed of adventures, their energy consumed by the mere struggle to survive. Aganju, I murmured to myself, you have the power to end this. But I also knew my power was double-edged. The same fire that could melt the ice and bring warmth could also incinerate everything I loved. It had happened before, in ancient times, when my uncontrolled rage had turned gardens into deserts. The guilt of those destructions still burned in my soul like molten iron. So I decided to climb to the highest peak, where the biting wind lashed my face and forced me to confront my own nature. There, in the icy solitude, I began to meditate on what it meant to be an Orixa of fire. It wasn't just about destroying or creating. It was about the delicate balance between the two. For days I remained in contemplation. I felt every fiber of my being vibrate with volcanic energy. I realized my heart pulsed in rhythm with eruptions, my breath warming the air around me. I began to understand that fire was not merely a destructive force. It was pure transformation, the ability to reshape the world. But the true revelation came when a child, a little girl lost in the blizzard, stumbled toward my mountain. She was nearly frozen, her lips blue, her tiny fingers stiff with cold. Without thinking, I extended my hands and let a gentle warmth emanate from me. Not the devastating fire I knew, but something soft, protective. She opened her eyes and smiled. "Thank you, Lord of Fire," she whispered weakly. In that moment, I understood. My power was not a curse. It was a responsibility. I was not just Aganju, the destroyer of worlds. I was Aganju, the protector, the guardian of balance, and my people needed me. The decision was made. I would open a volcano to warm the land, but this time it would be different. This time I would control every flame, every eruption, every drop of lava. Not out of fear of my power, but out of love for those who depended on me. You who listened to me have surely felt this same tension. The moment when you must make a decision that could change everything. Perhaps you don't carry literal fire in your veins, but we all have our inner powers, our personal volcanoes. The question is, how do we use that strength? To destroy or to protect? The preparation for what was to come would demand everything from me. I would need to dive into the depths of the earth, commune with the primordial forces, convince them to aid me. It would not be easy. The bowels of the world hold ancient and dangerous secrets, and not all the beings dwelling there were friendly. But I was determined. For the first time in centuries, I felt my purpose was clear. It wasn't just about ending the winter. It was about proving to myself that I could be the Orixa my people deserved, strong enough to face any challenge, but wise enough to know when to stop. The wind howled around the mountain, as if nature itself sensed the storm to come. I closed my eyes and allowed the inner fire to begin to grow, controlled, measured, but unstoppable. The journey was just beginning, and I knew it would be the hardest of my existence. But I also knew that, in the end, I would discover not only how to save my land, but how to save myself as well. The descent into the earth. The journey to the center of the earth began at dawn. Not an ordinary dawn, but that moment when the darkness of the eternal winter grew just a little less dense. I pressed my hands against the solid rock of the mountain and felt its response. A primal pulse, as if the earth itself had a gigantic heart beating in its depths. "Mother Earth," I whispered, "I need your help." The response came as a fissure opening beneath my feet. It was not a fall. It was an invitation. I let my body transform into pure, fiery energy and plunged into the bowels of the world, descending through tunnels of stone that had existed since the beginning of time. The deeper I went, the more intense the heat became, but it wasn't uncomfortable for me. It was like coming home. The cave walls glowed with veins of magma pulsing like luminous arteries. I could hear the earth breathing, feel its ancient power enveloping me. It was in those depths that I met the primordials, beings of fire and rock who had existed since the world's formation. They watched me with eyes like glowing embers, their bodies made of solidified lava and crystals that reflected the inner light. "A Ganju," said the largest of them, his voice echoing like the rumble of a distant eruption. "You return to the depths. Why?" I explained about the great winter, the suffering of my people on the surface, my need to open a controlled volcano. The primordials exchanged glances, and I could feel their doubts like waves of heat. "You've tried to control your fire before," another reminded me. "Do you remember what happened to the Valley of Eternal Flowers?" The memory hit me like a hammer. Millennia ago, I had tried to help an arid region by creating small pockets of heat. I lost control, and what should have been a blessing became a curse. The entire valley turned to ash, and nothing grows there to this day. "I was young," I replied, striving to keep my voice steady. "I've learned from my mistakes." "Learned?" the primordial questioned, his eyes glowing brighter. "Or do you merely fear repeating the same mistakes?" The question cut through me like a sharp blade. Did my determination to control the fire stem from wisdom or from fear? A corrosive doubt spread through my soul like acid. "Show us," said the leader of the primordials. "Prove you can balance creation and destruction." They led me to a vast chamber where a lake of lava bubbled quietly. In the center, an island of black rock. On it, a single stone flower, delicate, perfect, but cold as the winter above. "Warm the flower without destroying it," was the challenge. "If you succeed, we will help you. If you fail," they didn't need to finish the sentence. I approached the edge of the lava lake, feeling the intense heat rising from its depths. The stone flower was a few meters away, but it might as well have been in another world. Any mistake, any loss of control, and it would disintegrate. I closed my eyes and began to meditate, seeking that inner place where fire and serenity met. I remembered the lost child in the blizzard, how I had warmed her without harming her. What difference was there between her and this flower? I extended my right hand toward the flower and let a tiny flame sprout from my palm. It wasn't the devastating fire I knew, but something different. A flame carrying intention, purpose, love. I guided it carefully through the air, watching it dance unhurriedly. The flame touched the flower, and for a terrible moment I thought I had failed. But then something magical happened. The stone flower began to glow softly, radiating a gentle warmth. It didn't crumble, didn't turn to ash. It simply awoke, as if it had been slumbering for eons. The primordials remained silent for a long moment. Then the leader approached me. "You have learned," he said simply, "but the true test is yet to come." They led me deeper still, to a chamber that seemed to exist at the very heart of the earth. There, streams of magma intertwined like rivers of light, and the air vibrated with ancient power. In the center, a rock formation shaped like an altar, upon which rested something that made me tremble, a fragment of the original fire, the first flame ignited when the world was born. "This is the core of every volcano," the leader explained. "From it springs the force that moves mountains and shapes continents, but it can also consume entire worlds." I gazed at the fragment with reverence and terror. It pulsed with a light that seemed alive, and I could feel its immense energy even from a distance. It was beautiful and terrifying at once. "To open a controlled volcano," the primordial continued, "you must merge part of your essence with this fragment. But beware, once done, there is no going back. You will be bound to it forever. Every eruption will be your pain, every flame your responsibility." I understood the weight of those words. It wasn't just about saving my people. It was about transforming into something else, taking on a responsibility that would last forever. It would be like carrying a second heart, one that would never stop beating. And if I lose control? I asked. Then you will become destruction itself, another primordial replied. There will be no Aganju, only fire without direction. I thought of my people on the surface, the children who no longer played, the elders who had lost hope. I thought of the little girl I had warmed, her smile as warmth returned to her body. Was it worth the risk? There is another option, the leader said, as if reading my thoughts. You can choose a single, powerful eruption, strong enough to break the winter but without full control. It would be safer for you, but it could destroy everything, I finished. Exactly. The choice is yours, Aganju. Safety for yourself or eternal responsibility for balance. There was no real choice. I approached the altar, feeling the power of the original fire grow with each step. My skin began to glow, reacting to the proximity of that primal essence. When I touched the fragment, an explosion of sensations coursed through me. I saw the birth of the first volcanoes, felt the earth's pain as it was shaped for the first time. I experienced the joy of creation and the sorrow of destruction. I understood that fire and life were inseparable, that warmth and care were part of the same essence. The fragment dissolved in my hand, merging with my soul. Instantly, I felt my consciousness expand. I could sense every source of heat on earth, every ember, every flame, but I also felt the responsibility, a permanent connection to the balance of the world. It is done, I whispered, and my voice echoed with a new, deeper, older timbre. The primordials bowed respectfully. Now you are more than an Orisha of fire, the leader said. You are a guardian of balance. Use your power wisely. I began the ascent back to the surface, but now everything was different. Every layer of rock I passed responded to my presence. I felt the earth preparing for what was to come, adjusting its inner forces to receive the new volcano. When I finally emerged at the surface, the world seemed different. It wasn't just my perception. It was as if I had gained new eyes. I could see the currents of energy flowing through the earth, feel the pulse of life still resisting beneath the ice. But I also felt the weight of responsibility. Every decision would now affect not only my people, but the entire balance of the world. There was no longer room for error, for reckless impulses. I had chosen to become a guardian, and guardians do not have the luxury of carelessness. The place for the volcano was clear in my mind. A central plain, equidistant from all the villages, where the heat could spread evenly. But how to do this without destroying anything precious? The answer would come in the moments that followed, as I faced the greatest challenge of my existence, awakening a volcano with love instead of anger. The awakening of the volcano. The chosen plain was a sacred place, where my ancestors had danced in celebration of life millennia ago. Now, covered in meters of ice, it looked like a graveyard of memories, but I could feel its dormant essence, waiting for the moment of awakening. I knelt on the ice and pressed my palms against the frozen surface. The contrast was brutal, the biting cold against the heat now pulsing permanently within me. I closed my eyes and let my consciousness expand, diving through layers of ice, earth, and rock until I found the exact point where the volcano should be born. Mother Earth, I whispered, help me do this with love. The response came as a gentle vibration, almost a whisper of approval. I began to channel my transformed energy, but this time it was different. It wasn't the raw fire of before. It was a conscious force, guided by the wisdom I had gained in the depths. Every flame carried intention. Every eruption had purpose. I felt the earth respond, its layers moving in harmony with my will. But it wasn't easy. Every moment I had to fight against my instinctive nature, against the urge to simply unleash all my power at once. The fragment of the original fire in my soul pulsed with almost uncontrollable energy, whispering promises of glorious destruction. No, I murmured to myself. Not this time. Hours passed, perhaps days. Time seemed distorted when working with primordial forces. Gradually, I felt the magma rising from the depths, but not in a violent eruption. It was as if the earth were giving birth, a natural and necessary process. The first sign was a crack in the ice, thin as a hair. Then hot steam began to rise, melting the snow around it. My people, gathered at a safe distance, watched with a mix of hope and fear. "A Ganju," called a familiar voice. It was the child I had warmed on the mountain, now joined by other little ones. "You did it." But I knew the real test was only beginning. Creating the volcano was one thing. Controlling it permanently was another entirely. I felt the power wanting to burst forth, like a dammed river fighting against its barrier. Then the unexpected happened. The ice began to crack faster than I had anticipated. The volcano wanted to be born with more force, and I realized my control wasn't as absolute as I had thought. A wave of panic surged through me. Would this be the moment I failed again? "Balance," I whispered, recalling the primordial's words. "Don't control, balance." The difference was subtle but crucial. Instead of trying to dominate the volcano, I began to dance with it. When its strength surged, I redirected it. When it threatened to explode, I dispersed it. It was like a cosmic dance between creation and restraint. Slowly, magnificently, the volcano began to emerge. It wasn't a traditional mountain. It was something new, unique. Its slopes were gentle, covered in porous stone that radiated constant warmth. At the summit, a circular crater from which a golden glow emanated, like a benevolent eye watching the land. But the true miracle happened when the first flames began to dance in the crater. They weren't destructive flames. They were sources of life. The heat they gave off was exactly what was needed to melt the ice without vaporizing the water, to warm the earth without drying it. A new world. What happened next was like witnessing the birth of a new world. The volcano's heat spread across the land like invisible waves, each carrying life and renewal. The ice began to melt, not violently but gradually, as if nature itself were awakening from a deep slumber. I watched my people approach cautiously, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and gratitude. The children were the first to venture forward, their laughter echoing for the first time in months. I saw elders who had lost hope smile genuinely, and young people who began to dream of the future again. But it was when I saw the first flower sprouting from the newly warmed soil that I truly understood what I had achieved. It was a small, delicate flower, but its petals glowed with a light of their own. It wasn't just a plant, it was a symbol of renewal, of life that always finds a way. "You did it," said a voice behind me. It was my sister Imanja who had come to witness the miracle. "You truly managed to balance destruction and creation." I smiled, feeling a peace I hadn't known in millennia. It wasn't just me. It was the earth, the primordials, our people, all of us together. In the days that followed, the transformation was complete. The volcano continued to radiate its benevolent heat, maintaining the perfect temperature for life. Rivers began to flow again, forests regrew, and my people could rebuild their lives. But I knew my journey had changed forever. The fragment of the original fire in my soul bound me permanently to the volcano. I could feel every fluctuation in its energy, every moment that needed adjustment. It was a responsibility that would last forever, but also a source of purpose that filled me completely. I built my dwelling on the volcano's slopes where I could monitor its pulse constantly. It wasn't a prison, it was a sanctuary. From there, I could feel life flourishing around me, hear the laughter of children and the songs of elders. Years passed, and the volcano became the heart of a new civilization. My people built their cities around its slopes, using the constant heat for agriculture and craftsmanship. But more importantly, they learned to live in harmony with the force that sustained them. Many came to me seeking advice, especially young people struggling with their own inner powers. I remember a young warrior who carried a destructive anger in her heart, much like I had in my youth. "A Ganju," she said. "How do you control something so powerful without losing it?" I smiled, recalling when I had asked similar questions. "It's not about control," I replied. "It's about understanding. When you realize your power isn't separate from you but part of who you are, then you can guide it with wisdom." "But what if I hurt someone?" she asked, her eyes reflecting a fear I knew well. "Then you learn, you forgive yourself, and you try again. The important thing isn't to never fail. It's to never stop trying to be better." These conversations constantly reminded me why I had chosen to become a guardian of balance. It wasn't just about protecting my people from cold or excessive heat. It was about teaching that true strength comes from love, not fear. The volcano continued to pulse gently, and I could feel its contentment. It had found its purpose just as I had. We were no longer a directionless, destructive force. We were guardians of life, protectors of the balance that keeps the world in harmony. Sometimes, in the silent nights, I found myself reflecting on the journey I had taken. From the dark days when my uncontrolled anger created deserts, through the descent into the earth's depths, to this moment of peace and purpose. Every mistake, every pain, every moment of doubt had been necessary to bring me here. The fragment of the original fire in my soul no longer whispered promises of destruction. Now it sang songs of creation, of renewal, of eternal life. I had learned that true power didn't lie in breaking things. It lay in knowing when and how to build. A legacy of balance. Today, as I look out over the land stretching beyond the volcano, I see a world in perfect balance. The heat emanating from our sacred mountain is not just a source of physical life. It is a symbol of hope, proof that even the most destructive forces can be transformed into blessings. My people have learned to honor both fire and water, both warmth and cold. They have understood that balance doesn't mean the absence of power, but its conscious use. And that is the most important lesson I can share with you who listen. We all have our inner volcanoes: anger, passion, ambition, fear. The question isn't how to eliminate them, but how to transform them into positive forces. When you feel that inner fire wanting to erupt, remember, you have the power to choose whether it will be destructive or creative. The volcano I created still pulses today, decades later. It has become not only a source of heat, but a place of pilgrimage for those seeking to understand balance. And I remain here, its eternal guardian, not as a prison, but as a privilege. Because I discovered that true power lies not in dominating, but in serving, not in destroying, but in protecting. And when you find that balance within yourself, you become more than you ever thought possible. The fire still burns in me, as intense as it ever was, but now it is a fire of love, of protection, of constant creation. And as long as my people need warmth, as long as the earth needs balance, I will be here, dancing with the flames of life. This is my story, the journey of how I learned that true strength comes from love. And if you too carry fire in your heart, know that you are not alone. We all have the power to choose how to use our inner strength. The next time you feel that heat rising within you, remember my journey. You too can transform your fire into a source of life. Share in the comments. What is your inner volcano, and how can you turn it into a positive force?